Good day, Deeper Mart family. Welcome to day 265 of our Bible study review. Today we're going through the chapters 5 through 7 of the book of Esther. So where did we leave off yesterday? With Esther and Mordecai calling for all of the Jews that are in the land of Susa to do a 3-day fast, a dry fast. No water, no food. And she said only then would she put herself in danger and place herself in front of the king, her husband. Now, there is a law that you do not go into the presence of the king unless he summons you. Now, if you did so and he showed mercy by holding out his golden scepter, then you would live. But the rule of the land is that you do not approach the king unless you are called for. So now as we walk into chapter 5, it's the third day. And now Queen Esther is putting on her royal apparel to make her presence known before the king. So she puts herself in the line of sight of him. And of course, he has grace and mercy on her, and he hands out the royal golden scepter. So let's see what he has to say to her in verse 3. And the king said to the queen, "What do you want? What is your request? Even if it is as half of the kingdom, it will be given to you." Esther answered, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to a feast that I have prepared for him." And so the king quickly calls for Haman, and then they go and eat at this feast that the queen has prepared for them both. And the king questions the queen, Esther, again, "What is your request? What is it that you truly want from me?" And she says, "Well, if it pleases you that you and Haman would come and attend a banquet that I would put together for you." So Queen Esther then goes to prepare a banquet for the both of them. And Haman at this point is very puffed up and full of himself. He feels very privileged that not only was he summoned to a personal feast with the king, him, and the queen, so in his mind, he thinks that something is being prepared for him. So he leaves the king's palace and he's going outside of the king's gate, and all of the people bow before Haman, except for Mordecai. Now, Mordecai is agitated at this Jew, Mordecai, still that he won't bow to him, but nonetheless, his heart is gleeful and joyful about this banquet that is being prepared. And so when he goes home, he tells his family about all of these wonderful things that are taking place. And then his family and those who are in the house tell him to prepare a place for this Mordecai, to bring him to a place of punishment. Haman's wife actually suggests that he prepares a gallows of 50 cubits high so that Mordecai can be hung on it. So we see that Haman thinks this is a really great idea. He builds the gallows and he is, anticipating that he has this favor, that he may ask this of the king concerning Mordecai. But as we walk into chapter 6, we see that the king is not able to sleep. So he calls for the chronicles that have been recorded to be read unto him. And so it is made known to him that Mordecai, this Jew that settles outside of the king's gate, actually made the matter known that 2 of the king's own eunuchs were conspiring to hurt him. And it's because of Mordecai that the king's life was in safety. And so the king says, "What has been done for this Jew, for this man Mordecai?" And the king's assistant says, Nothing has been done for this man." And so that very night, after Haman is done building the gallows, he's on his way to go see the king to see about this matter of putting this man Mordecai to punishment. Meanwhile, the king wants to bless this man. And so he asks, the king sees Haman coming, but he doesn't quite know that it's him. And he says to his assistants, "Who's in the courtyard?" And they make it known to him, it's Haman. And he says, "Well, bring him in." And so he wants to consult with Haman. "What shall I do for a man of great honor?" And Haman thinks that the king wants to bless him. So Haman goes through this wonderful list of what the king shall do for a man of honor. And so this is what Haman suggests to the king. He says, "Let royal apparel be brought that the king himself has worn, and a horse on which the king has ridden, which the royal insignia is on its head. Let the apparel and the horse for this man be handled by one of the king's noble officials in order to dress the man whom the king delights to honor, as well as to lead him on the horse throughout the whole city. Finally, let him proclaim before him, like this it shall be done for the man whom the king delights to honor. So we pick up in verse 10. The king said to Haman, quickly, take the apparel and the horse as you have said, and do so for Mordecai, the Jew, sitting at the king's gate. Of course, everything you have spoken, do not fall short of any of it. Child, how is that for a slice of humble pie? To the greatest magnitude. I love this story. Now, this makes me think of Psalm 23. You prepare for me a table in the midst of my enemies. Haman had to dress Mordecai. Haman had to go about the city and he had to proclaim, like this man, this is what shall be done for a man of honor. The man he was going to the king to seek about killing. He now is so embarrassed that he has to honor this man in front of everyone. After this is done, Haman goes to his house. He is embarrassed. He's in anguish. He tells his family what has just happened. Let's read the last portion of chapter 6. It says, then his wise friends and his wife Zeresh said to him, if Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of Jewish lineage, then you will not be victorious over him. Rather, you will surely fall before him. His wife is prophesying correctly. And it says right here in verse 14, while they were still talking with him, the king's eunuchs arrived and rushed Haman to the banquet that Esther had prepared. So now we walk into chapter 7 and the banquet is prepared. Haman is summoned, right? Because Esther has requested this, that both would be present. And so the king asks, while Haman is there and while she is there, he asks her again, now my queen, what is it that you truly request of me? Let's pick up in verse 3. Queen Esther replied, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king at my petition, let my life be given to me, mine and my people at my request. For we have been sold to be destroyed and to be slain and to be annihilated. If only we had been sold as male and female slaves, I could have kept quiet, for that distress would not be sufficient to trouble the king. Then the king answered the queen and demanded, who is he and where is he? Who would dare presume in his heart to do so? Esther said, this wicked man Haman is the adversary. He's the enemy. At that moment, Haman was seized, and the king was so enraged he had to go out in the courtyard and contemplate what he was going to do about the matter. At this point, Haman is at the feet of the queen, begging for his life. And so the king comes back in and he goes, are you going to try to defile my queen while I'm out in the courtyard? Back in those days, right? Men were not to be alone in the room with a woman without her husband present. Let's read the last few verses and close out chapter 7. It says, as the shout erupted from the king's mouth, they covered the face of Haman, probably like with a sack or something. And it says, then Harbona, one of the eunuchs in the king's presence, said, the gallows, 50 cubits high, which Haman has constructed for Mordecai, stands at the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him on it. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's wrath was pacified. Haman sowed seeds that he himself reaped. And we see that Queen Esther, while she dressed herself in the royal apparel and she still made herself humble before the king, let us know that we can also petition our king on high. And we already know that he hears us. We already know that we have mercy and grace from him. And when we make our petitions known and we walk in his righteousness, he will vindicate us just the same. But hang on for the closing of the book of Esther, because we see that the justice is not completely served quite yet. Deep Word family, that's all that I have for you today. Until tomorrow, Yah bless.